Kansas at Southern Miss, Friday night ESPN. Marco, what should bettors be thinking about?
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, which Kansas is going to show up? Because you can't have more opposite end scores than this team has had in the first 2 weeks of the season.
I mean, looking at the line moves last week, unless I'm mistaken, that was Georgia Tech, right? It went from 7 to 14. I mean, massive line move, wins the game straight up.
Well, when you lose at home to North Dakota State, you know, public's going to have an overreaction for sure.
Especially with a new coach, like we talked about before, is there's a sense of it's almost like a job interview. You go into a job interview. If someone's been on the job for a year at your company, they come in and have a bad day, you don't think about it. It's one of 365 days. New coach, it's one game of one game, overreaction. They come back, so we don't ask questions, we answer them. How good's KU?
KU is not as good as the KU we saw beat Georgia Tech last week.
Oh, that's God, this is such a cop-out. They're not as good as their best game and not as bad as their worst game.
That's a mantra that's my mantra. I mean, it's something that you have to use in handicapping.
No,
but
I agree with that. I agree.
But see, what happens is it's a twofold effect. If you're the Georgia Tech players, when you went in there last week, you got to have taken this team a little bit for granted after you saw that score. So that's an advantage that they had, that Southern Mississippi, they're not going to be ambushed. They're going to know that Kansas has some talent, and they're going to be prepared.
Plus, Southern Miss, as like a 13-point dog, went into KU last year, got beat, could have won the game.
They did, and I mean, there's no question the Kansas team last year is better than the team that we have right now. How much better, we don't know. The season's going to progress. But we've got an advantage here of Southern Miss playing at home. As you talked about in our earlier video, this is a Friday night game. So, again, it's a short week, not as short as a Thursday night game, but you had Kansas that played and has got to travel on the road on a Thursday night, playing a team they generally...
On a Friday night.
On a Friday night, sorry, that you generally don't play. You did have the advantage that you played them last year, but it's...
New coaching staff.
New coaching staff.
And that brings up another point we talked about in the Thursday game, is Kansas is 20 of 27 ATS in September, but what does it matter? Because that was all under Mangino. So, again, it's important with coaching changes. Now, sometimes certain trends may still be applicable across coaching tenures, staffs, but this would be one, a certain kind of preparation in spring ball leading to the preseason doubles. Certain teams start fast, certain teams don't. We don't know yet with Kansas. Now let's dig in a little bit because it's a little too much of a cop-out. You know, let's just do a little something here. You have one extreme, horrible performance, other extreme, good performance, winning as a 14-point dog. Clearly it's probably in between. But which way, let's say if we're right in the middle, is Kansas more the bad team or more the good team relative to those two performances?
They would be more on the side of the center towards the good team, not as bad as the team.
Now, what makes you say, so if I'm out there looking, let's think of the different levels of handicapping. There's look at the score. Then there's look at the box score. Then there's look at the game. Then there's understanding exactly what's happening within the game. If I'm even just going to the second level, I'm doing more than looking at the score, what makes you think they're a little bit better than in between those two results?
Because, and we don't want to keep preaching the coaching staff, but because it is a totally new coaching staff, it's going to be better each week. And I think that
But week three, we've been preaching the last couple weeks that coaching early, this might be the last time I get to say this, expectations with new coaches are high, performance is typically low, that equals value fading. I agree, week one it's more prevalent than week two it's more prevalent than week three, but wouldn't you say it's at least mid-season before performance and expectation are at least equal?
Absolutely. Anytime you got more data to work with, you're going to come to the norm with what you're looking at, but there's going to be...
I think you're misunderstanding, so let's take a minute. What I'm saying is in week one, in general, with a new coach, there's expectation, let's say, is here. Performance is here.
Right.
Each week, they get closer. The expectation chances are lowers. Performance increases as the system gets more familiar, et cetera, et cetera. At a certain point, in theory, expectation is going to be passed by performance, and that's when it's going to be a play on. My thought typically is that crossing between the two happens more towards the middle of the season and beyond, where all of a sudden not only aren't there high expectations, but there's low, oh my God, this new coach is horrible. Finally, they're getting used to the system, and they're a play-on team. Week 3 typically isn't that point.
No, if I'm understanding you correctly, the value aspect
Exactly.
of analyzing it that way, yes, is going to be more when you get to that tipping point. That's where the best value is going to be, when you just cross it. But what I was saying is, from a continuity standpoint and the team progressing as just a team that's going to get better.
They're better in week 3 than week 1.
Right.
Okay.
And they're going to continue to do that. But what you have going this week, why I think it's another disadvantage, is because it's their first road game under the new coaching staff, and they've got to do it on a short week against an opponent that they don't normally play.
You just made a great point. You really, that's a great point. We can say this is game 3, but for one of the scenarios that is the most challenging for a college team, we're going to talk later about the Colts are a great road team. They're so professional. I'm also going to talk about Florida being almost professional as a road team because of how big the program is and the continuity they have there. But when you have a new coach, first time on the road, that is entirely, I mean, literally, and I have some friends in the business, it's, booking the hotel, it's transit from the airport. I mean, there's so many details. And that's very interesting that even game 3, being on the road for the first time, is going to have an enhanced negativity for the lack of continuity with the new coach.
And take a day off your week doing it on Friday.
Great point. You got a projection in this game?
Well, with everything I've just said, you know which way I'm going. I'm going to go with Southern Miss here at home. I think it's a tremendous advantage to them in this game. Kansas, I still think they're right now not a great ball club. I'm going to go with Southern Miss to win this game by 10. Lay the points with Southern Miss. 30-20 is my projected score.
Okay, last quick point. This is a fun one. We could do a whole podcast on it, but I'll make it quick. Teasers. I've been putting out a teaser just this first week in NFL. It won nice and easy. I think in the NFL there's a lot of value with teasers potentially, especially if they pass through 3 and 7. I like teasers much less. In fact, I never play teasers in college. Reason being, each point is worth less. The line is tighter in the NFL, which means it's harder to beat the point spread, but it's easier to beat teasers. That's an interesting paradox. But that's a whole other conversation too. But specifically, whenever you have a team that has high variance, so there's certain teams that some weeks they're great and some weeks they're horrible. Kansas is maybe the most extreme example of that this year. Horrible and really good. That's the last game you want to tease. You want to tease teams that are like the Steelers from 5 years ago, very consistent. You're always going to get a good performance from them. They may win, they may lose, but they're going to keep it close. Kansas could lose by 30 or win by 30 in this game. Doesn't mean you don't want to bet the side, because if you believe it's going to be more than 55%, but you very much probably don't want to tease games in which points mean less, and with a high variance team like Kansas, they mean less.
Right. In what you said about college and NFL, it's absolutely true, and because teams do get blown out so much quicker in college.
I mean, the line just simply is less accurate, which means there's more value to bet it straight, less value with teasers.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
Absolutely. Okay. Now it's your turn to join the conversation in the comments section with Marco and me. And next up, we're moving to Saturday college football.